Hey everyone, and welcome to our deep dive, on learning English effectively.
Yeah.
You guys sent in some really cool stuff that breaks down all the mistakes people make when they're learning English.
Yeah, it's great.
It's almost like a cheat sheet
Yeah.
for what not to do, and I think that we all can relate to that because who hasn't, hit a wall while learning a new language?
It's true.
So I'm really excited to dig into all this with you.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting about this source is that it doesn't just, tell us what those wrong turns are.
Right.
It kind of helps us understand, like, why they're so tempting in the first place.
Exactly. Like sometimes just knowing the why is like such a game changer,
Yeah, totally.
So I guess first up, let's talk about this whole grammar debate.
Okay.
How many times have we heard that mastering grammar is the key to fluency?
Right.
This source kind of throws a wrench in that, doesn't it?
It does. It
Yeah.
really pushes back on the idea that, like, obsessing over grammar is the path to fluency.
Yeah.
You can spend years memorizing verb tenses and sentence structures.
I know.
But if you can't have a conversation,
Right.
is that knowledge really serving?
It's like knowing all the ingredients for a cake,
Yeah,
but not knowing how to actually bake it.
exactly.
I've been there.
Yeah.
Definitely. Like getting so caught up in the rules
hmm
that I forget that the whole point is to communicate.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And, this source emphasizes that language is really about communication, not just accuracy.
Mm-hmm.
And it even calls out this thing called like the passive learning loop,
Oh, yeah.
which I think a lot of people fall into where they kind of avoid speaking
Right.
until they feel ready.
Until it's perfect.
Yeah, and waiting to speak can actually, I think, make you less fluent in the long run.
Yeah, it's like being afraid to ride a bike until you've memorized every part of how it works.
Yeah.
You'll never get anywhere.
It-
So are you saying we should just throw caution to the wind and just start speaking, even if it sounds like a toddler trying to do Shakespeare?
Not exactly.
Okay.
But I think it's more about recognizing that speaking even with mistakes
Yeah,
is really crucial for training your brain to think in English
right.
and react spontaneously.
Because building up those muscles,
Yeah,
the more you use them, the stronger they get.
exactly.
But speaking of building fluency, the source also talks about vocabulary.
Okay.
And it's not what you'd expect.
Really?
I mean, who hasn't tried to memorize those endless word lists thinking that's going to magically make them fluent?
Oh yeah, we've all been there.
Right.
The problem is that those lists often lack context.
Oh, yeah.
You might recognize a word on paper, but can you actually use it in a sentence?
Right?
To understand the subtle shades of meaning?
Right. It's like knowing that the word bank can be a financial institution or the edge of a river,
Yeah.
but then using it incorrectly and confusing everyone. The source really highlights the importance of learning vocabulary and context
Uh-huh.
so you can actually use those words.
Yeah, and that kind of brings up another point too about the importance of diversifying your resources.
Okay.
The source suggests that just relying on a single textbook or app
Mm-hmm.
can limit your exposure to the richness of English.
Yeah.
It's like only listening to one genre of music.
Right.
You're missing out on a whole world.
I love that analogy. I'm a big podcast fan myself, and I've noticed that listening to different podcasts
Yeah.
has really helped me get used to different accents and speaking styles.
Yeah.
It's like a crash course in all the different ways people speak English.
And I think that exposure is really key
Right.
for developing a more flexible understanding of the language.
Mm-hmm.
You'll be better prepared to understand people from all walks of life.
Okay, so we've talked about grammar.
Yeah.
We've talked about speaking.
Yeah.
We've talked about vocabulary.
Mm.
What about pronunciation? I think we've all had those moments where we think we're saying something perfectly,
Right.
and it's just not landing.
Yes.
And the source really doesn't shy away from how important pronunciation is
No.
for clear communication.
It really goes beyond just sounding good,
Right.
although I think that's a part of it.
Yeah.
Poor pronunciation can lead to misunderstandings,
Yeah.
even if your grammar is perfect.
Right.
Imagine confusing ship and sheep in a conversation.
The chaos.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. Clear pronunciation is so essential for making sure your message is understood.
Exactly.
So it's like learning the music of the language.
Yeah.
But speaking of mastering a skill,
Okay.
let's talk about fluency.
Yeah.
Because I think we all crave that feeling of being able to effortlessly speak English.
Yeah.
But is there a magic shortcut?
I think the source is pretty clear that there are no quick fixes.
Okay.
Expecting rapid results without consistent effort is expecting to get ripped after one workout.
Right.
It's just not realistic.
Yeah. I've definitely fallen into that trap of thinking I could cram my way to fluency. But this source reminds us it's a marathon, not a sprint.
It is a marathon.
It's about building those skills slowly over time.
And, just like a marathon runner wouldn't expect to run flawlessly without any stumbles.
Yeah.
The source also emphasizes the importance of embracing mistakes.
Oh, yeah.
Avoiding mistakes, I think, prevents you from, taking risks
Right.
and pushing yourself.
I have so many stories about making mistakes in English.
Yeah.
I once told a friend I was very pregnant instead of very busy,
Oh, no.
which got some interesting reactions.
Yeah.
But those moments, as awkward as they can be, are so valuable.
They are. They teach us so much.
Yeah.
More than any textbook.
So instead of beating ourselves up over those mistakes,
Yeah.
we can view them as stepping stones.
Exactly.
Okay, there's another point in here that I think a lot of learners can relate to.
Okay.
This habit of translating everything from their native language. And it's tricky because languages don't always translate neatly. Direct translation can often lead to unnatural phrasing,
Uh-huh.
and it can really slow you down in conversations.
Right. It's like trying to drive a car while looking in the rearview mirror.
Right.
You're never fully focused on what's ahead.
I can totally see how clinging to that translation would hold you back from really immersing yourself.
Yeah.
So how do we actually start thinking in English?
Do
Do we just snap our fingers?
I wish it were that easy.
But the source does offer some practical tips.
Right.
And one of them is to start small, like narrating your daily activities in English.
In your head.
Yeah, so as you're going about your day, just describe what you're doing,
Yeah.
what you see, what you feel.
It's a great way to just start immersing yourself.
So instead of thinking, I'm making breakfast, I'm thinking, I'm whipping up some scrambled eggs.
Exactly.
Although maybe I would skip the fancy vocabulary first thing in the morning.
Yeah, maybe keep it simple.
But it's about gradually, like you said, immersing those thoughts,
Yeah.
even if it's awkward.
That ties into another point the source raises about really paying attention to how native speakers use the language.
Yeah.
Because it is one thing to, learn grammar rules and vocabulary lists.
Yeah.
But it's a whole other game to understand how those pieces fit together in, authentic communication.
Right. It's one thing to know the rules, but it's another to know how to actually play the game.
Exactly.
And I think this is where, that active listening comes in.
It does.
The source really emphasizes that listening isn't just this passive activity.
Right.
It's a skill that we have to practice.
Yeah.
Just like speaking or writing.
Uh-huh.
And this is something I struggle with because sometimes I can understand individual words,
Yeah.
but then when native speakers are speaking at their normal speed, I get lost.
Yeah, I think a lot of English learners face that challenge.
Yeah.
But, listening's like a muscle.
Right.
The more you work it,
The stronger it gets.
the stronger it gets.
So what are some practical ways
Okay.
that we can work that muscle?
Well,
I know the source mentions a few strategies.
yeah, one of the best is to immerse yourself in, authentic content.
Yeah.
Podcasts are fantastic for this because they offer such a wide variety of, topics and styles.
You and your podcasts.
Well-
I have to agree. I've discovered so many amazing podcasts, and it's not just helped my listening,
Right.
but I've learned about different cultures and different perspectives.
And that's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
You're learning so much more than just the language.
It's like a 2-for-1 deal.
Exactly.
But besides podcasts,
Okay.
what are some other ways we can practice that active listening?
Watching movies or TV shows with English subtitles can be helpful.
Right?
It allows you to connect the spoken word with the written word.
Yeah.
And of course, nothing beats, real life conversations
Right.
with native speakers if you have access to those.
I've even found that listening to music in English has been really helpful, especially for getting used to that rhythm and intonation.
Absolutely. Any exposure can be beneficial.
So the key is to make it a regular part of your routine
Yeah,
and to find activities that you actually enjoy.
exactly.
So we've talked about thinking in English,
Uh-huh.
actively listening to native speakers,
Mhm.
immersing ourselves in real content.
Yeah.
It's a lot to take in,
It is.
but I think it all boils down to this one message.
What's that?
Learning English effectively requires this holistic approach.
I completely agree.
It's not about mastering one element in isolation.
Right.
It's about weaving it all together
Exactly.
to create this beautiful tapestry of fluency.
I love that image.
But before we get too caught up in the beauty of these tapestries,
Yeah.
let's talk about something that can really help bring all this together.
Okay.
And that's goal setting.
Goal setting.
We touched upon it a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
And the source really emphasizes its importance
It does.
for providing structure and motivation.
Yeah, because without clear goals, it's easy to get lost or overwhelmed.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that SMART framework we talked about?
Yeah.
Specific,
Measurable,
relevant.
time about.
It's like a roadmap for our language journey.
Roadmap, exactly.
So how do we actually apply this SMART framework
Okay.
to our English learning goals?
Well,
You have any real-life examples?
yeah, let's say your goal is to, improve your conversational skills.
Okay.
So instead of setting this vague goal like, I want to be a better conversationalist,
Right.
you could use the SMART framework to make it more specific.
Okay, walk me through it.
Okay, so first, let's make it specific.
Okay.
So instead of just saying better conversationalist, what area do you want to improve?
Let's say I want to be able to talk about my hobbies in English
Okay.
more confidently.
Great. Now let's make it measurable.
Okay.
How will you know if you've achieved this goal?
I guess I could aim to have a 5-minute conversation about my hobbies
Okay.
with a native speaker.
Without feeling totally lost or flustered.
That's great. Now, is that achievable?
Yeah.
Do you have the resources and time?
I think so. I can definitely commit to practicing a few times a week, maybe with a language partner
Right.
or an online tutor.
Excellent. Now, is this relevant to your overall language learning goals?
Definitely. I mean, being able to talk about my hobbies is something I would actually do
Yeah.
in real life conversations.
Exactly.
So it's very relevant to my goal of being more comfortable speaking English in social situations.
Wonderful. And finally, let's make it time-bound.
Okay.
When do you want to achieve this by?
How about 3 months from now?
Okay.
That gives me enough time to practice consistently
Yeah.
without feeling too much pressure.
So your SMART goal is, I will be able to hold a 5-minute conversation about my hobbies with a native speaker within 3 months.
Wow, that's amazing. I can already feel myself getting more motivated. Just
Yeah.
having that clear goal in mind. That's no
Yes.
longer this vague idea.
Right.
It's like a specific target I can aim for.
And that's the power of SMART goals.
Yeah.
They provide that clarity and direction.
So to all of our amazing listeners,
Yeah.
take a moment and think about your language goals.
Think about what you want to achieve.
What do you want to achieve with English?
Write it down.
Write it down. Make it smart.
Make it smart.
And let that goal be your guiding star
Exactly.
on your language learning journey.
Your journey.
And remember, it's a journey. It's not a race.
Embrace the challenges.
Yeah.
Celebrate your progress.
Mm-hmm.
And don't be afraid to make those mistakes along the way.
That's such a good reminder. Okay, we've explored a lot of valuable insights, I think, in this first part of our deep dive.
We have.
So take a moment to let it all sink in, and we'll be back soon.
We'll be back. Welcome back.
Woo, this is where it gets interesting. We were just talking about setting those SMART goals.
Yeah.
And I'm ready to hear, how we can take those goals to the next level.
Right.
What's the secret sauce?
Well, the source makes this fascinating point about thinking in English.
Okay.
And it argues that, relying too much on translation can actually, hinder our progress.
I've always wondered about that.
Yeah.
It feels almost impossible to just turn off that translation part of my brain.
Yeah.
Is it really that crucial to think in English?
The source suggests that it is.
Okay.
When we constantly translate in our heads,
Yeah.
it can lead to, unnatural phrasing,
Right.
and it can really slow down our responses.
Mm-hmm.
It's like trying to drive a car
Okay.
while looking in the rearview mirror.
Okay.
You're never fully focused on what's ahead of you.
That's such a good visual.
Yeah.
I can see how clinging to that translation would hold you back from
Wow.
really immersing yourself.
Ah.
So how do we actually start thinking in English?
Right.
We just snap our fingers.
Well, I wish it were that easy.
Right.
But the source does offer some practical tips.
Okay.
One suggestion is to start small by narrating your everyday activities in English.
Okay.
So as you go about your day,
Mm-hmm.
just describe what you're doing, what you see, what you feel.
So instead of thinking I'm making breakfast, I'm thinking I'm whipping up some scrambled eggs.
Exactly.
Although maybe I'd skip the fancy vocabulary first thing in the morning.
Yeah, keep it simple.
But it's about gradually immersing those thoughts,
Yeah.
even if it feels a little awkward.
And that kind of ties into another point that the source raises about really paying attention to how native speakers use the language.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one thing to learn the grammar and the vocabulary lists, but it's another to know how it all fits together.
Right. It's like you can know the rules of the game,
Right.
but it's a whole other thing to actually know how to play.
So that's where the active listening, I guess, really comes in.
It does.
The source emphasizes that listening isn't just a passive activity. It's something we have to practice.
We do.
And I'll admit, this is something I struggle with because I can understand individual words, but then when native speakers start talking at their normal speed,
Right.
I get lost.
You're not alone. A lot of English learners face that challenge.
Yeah.
But remember, listening is like a muscle.
Oh, okay.
The more you work it,
The stronger it gets.
the stronger it gets.
Okay. So what are some practical ways
Okay.
to strengthen those listening muscles?
Well,
I know the source has some strategies.
one of the best ways is to really immerse yourself.
Okay.
It's an authentic English content.
Yeah.
Like podcasts.
Oh, there they are again.
I know, right?
But seriously, I have to agree. I've discovered so many great podcasts, and it's helped my listening so much. And I've learned about different cultures, different perspectives.
That's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
You're learning so much more than just the language.
It's like a 2-for-1 deal.
It is.
But besides podcasts, what are some other ways
Okay.
to practice that active listening?
Watching movies or TV shows with English subtitles
Yeah, that's a good one.
can be helpful.
Mhm.
It allows you to connect the spoken word with the written word.
Yeah.
And of course, nothing beats real-life conversations
Right.
with native speakers.
If you have access to them.
Exactly.
I find that even listening to music in English
Yeah,
can help.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Any exposure can be beneficial.
So the key is to just make it a regular part of our routine.
Yeah.
Find things we enjoy.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about thinking in English.
Uh-huh.
We've talked about actively listening to native speakers,
Mm.
immersing ourselves in authentic content.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
It's a lot to take in.
But I think it all boils down to this one message.
Okay.
Effective language learning requires a holistic approach.
I completely agree.
It's not about mastering one element in isolation. It's
Yeah.
about weaving it all together
Right.
to create this tapestry of fluency.
It's a beautiful image.
Okay, so let's talk about how we can actually weave all these elements together. And we did touch upon goal setting earlier.
Yeah.
And I know the source emphasizes how important that is,
It's really important.
providing structure and motivation.
Yeah. You know those SMART goals?
Mm-hmm.
They're like the scaffolding.
Okay,
That holds everything together.
like a roadmap.
Exactly. A roadmap for your language adventure.
So how do we apply the SMART framework
Okay.
to our English learning goals?
Okay.
Do you have any real-life examples?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So let's say your goal is to improve your conversational skills.
Okay.
So instead of setting this vague goal like, I want to be a better conversationalist,
Right.
we can use the SMART framework to make it more specific.
Okay. Walk me through it.
All right, so first let's make it specific.
Okay.
So instead of just saying better conversationalist, what specific area do you want to improve?
Let's say I want to be able to talk about my hobbies more confidently.
Great, now let's make it measurable.
Okay.
How will you know if you've achieved this goal?
I guess I could aim to have a 5-minute conversation about my hobbies
Okay.
with a native English speaker
Mm.
without feeling totally lost or flustered.
That's great. Now, is that goal achievable?
Yeah.
Do you have the resources and the time?
I think so. I could commit to practicing a few times a week, maybe with a language partner or an online tutor.
Excellent. Now, is this goal relevant to your overall language learning objectives?
Oh, yeah. Definitely being able to talk about my hobbies is something I would actually do in real life.
Exactly.
So it's very relevant to my goal of being more comfortable in social situations.
Wonderful. And finally, let's make it time-bound.
Okay.
When do you want to achieve this by?
How about 3 months?
Okay.
That gives me enough time to practice consistently,
Yeah.
but not too much pressure.
So your SMART goal is, I will be able to hold a 5-minute conversation about my hobbies in English with a native speaker within 3 months.
Wow, that's really great. I can already feel myself getting more motivated
Yeah.
just by having that clear goal in mind. It's no longer this vague thing.
Right.
It's an actual target I can work towards.
That's the power of SMART goals.
Yeah.
They provide that clarity and direction.
So to our amazing listeners out there,
Yeah.
I encourage you to take a moment and think about your language goals.
That's right. What do you want to achieve?
Yeah, what do you want to achieve with English?
Write it down.
Write it down.
Make it smart.
Make it smart and let that be your guiding star
Your guiding star.
on your language learning journey.
And remember, it's a journey,
It is.
not a race. Embrace those challenges.
Okay.
Celebrate the progress,
Yeah,
and don't be afraid to make mistakes along the way.
that's such a good reminder. Okay, so we've explored a lot, I think, in this second part of our deep dive.
We have.
We've talked about the importance of thinking in English.
Yeah.
We talked about actively listening to native speakers.
Uh-huh.
And we talked about setting those SMART goals.
Those are key.
So take a moment, absorb all this great information, and we'll be right back for the final part.
We'll be back.
All right, we are back. And we've been talking about so much in this deep dive, about learning English effectively.
Yeah.
We've tackled all those grammar myths. We've explored the power of active listening.
All right.
And we've even crafted those SMART goals, to help keep us on track.
Right.
But I think there's one more piece of the puzzle
Okay.
that I'm really excited to, dig into.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
The source really emphasizes the importance of mindset.
Yeah.
It's not just about the techniques. It's about how we approach this whole learning process.
I think we've all had those moments of, frustration or self-doubt when we're learning something new, especially a language.
It's tough.
But this source is saying that if we cultivate the right mindset, that can really make all the difference.
It can. It's like that saying, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Oh, yeah.
Our beliefs about our abilities can really shape our success.
Yeah.
And when it comes to learning English, a growth mindset is key.
Okay, I've heard this term growth mindset a lot.
Yeah.
But what does it actually mean when it comes to language learning?
Well, the source defines it as embracing challenges,
Okay.
seeing mistakes as opportunities,
Okay.
and believing in your ability to progress. It's about focusing on the journey, not just the destination.
So instead of beating myself up
Yeah.
over every grammar mistake or awkward pronunciation,
Yeah.
I should view those as chances to learn and grow.
Exactly.
That's a big shift in perspective.
It is. And the source also highlights this fear of making mistakes.
Yeah.
It's totally natural to want to get things right.
Yeah.
But the truth is that mistakes are an essential part of learning.
Yeah, I remember feeling so self-conscious when I first started speaking English. I was so worried about making mistakes that I would just not speak at all. But I've noticed that the more I embrace those mistakes, the faster I learn.
That's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
Mistakes give us that feedback
Yeah.
and help us identify areas to improve.
So they're like little course corrections.
Exactly. They keep us on that path to fluency.
So instead of seeing them as failures, we can view them as stepping stones.
Right. Stepping stones to success.
I like that.
Yeah.
Speaking of success, I think a lot of learners, myself included, get so caught up in this idea of achieving perfection in English.
And a source says that striving for perfection can actually be counterproductive.
Oh, wow.
Because it sets us up for disappointment.
Yeah.
And it can make the whole process feel overwhelming.
Yeah.
Remember, even native English speakers make mistakes.
That's true. I think sometimes we forget that language is this living, evolving thing.
It is.
It's not about memorizing all these rules and then just speaking perfectly.
It's about connection, expression.
It's about communicating.
Which brings us back to, I think, the core message of the source.
Yeah. This idea that effective English learning is really this holistic thing.
I agree.
It's about embracing all of it.
The messiness, the challenges, the triumphs.
Okay, so we've come full circle.
Yeah, we have.
From those common mistakes to this mindset that really fosters progress.
And resilience.
Yeah. And I feel like we've really uncovered some great stuff.
Me too.
In this deep dive.
Yeah.
What's the one key takeaway
Oh, that's a good question.
you want our listeners to walk away with?
I think the most important message is that learning English effectively is within everyone's reach.
Yeah.
It's not about having this innate talent
Right.
or perfect pronunciation from day one.
Right.
It's about putting in the effort,
Yeah.
practicing strategically,
Mm-hmm.
and believing that you can succeed.
I love that.
Yeah.
So to our amazing listeners out there,
Yeah.
we hope this deep dive has been inspiring. And we hope that you approach your English learning journey with a new sense of purpose, with confidence and with adventure.
Embrace the challenges.
Celebrate your progress and never stop exploring.
The beauty of the English language.
We are cheering you on every step of the way.
We are.
Until next time, happy learning.